So welcome to the first training, positive reinforcement training for overweight horses. So this is the content of the 14-day program. We'll do introduction. I will do community rules. Oh, I forgot my notes, so I'll just improvise a little bit about that. And the topics that we will cover in this 14 days are positive reinforcement for humans and horses, because I like to use it for anybody. We'll talk about the learning hierarchy, because if you understand how learning takes place, it's easier to recognize if you're getting stuck and how you get unstuck. Principles of learning and motivation, that is key lesson number 1 for trainers. I have 6 key lessons for horses and 6 for trainers, and together they will cover the whole positive reinforcement training system that I developed over the years. We will talk about exercising your horse with positive reinforcement, management of the overweight horse, including enrichment. That will not be a main topic, but we will discuss it. We will also discuss general health and nutrition, but we don't go in depth. I'm not a nutritionist or a vet, but I think if we can share what we know and the knowledge in the group, I think we can benefit all of that. And then what you bring to the table. This is very much interactive program. So the more you are interactive, the more you get out of it. And today's content in this presentation, we'll do introductions, talk a bit about the community rules. And then, so I switched this part, the 3 options in movement training. I put that more in front of the presentation, so we'll see. I used to have that at the end, but we'll see how that goes. We will talk about learning strategies and awareness, my proven R+ training system, and then exercising your horse with positive reinforcement. What are common challenges and how to overcome them? So if you have in your head already, like, what is my struggle? How do I want to do it? Like the 3 options for movement training. I think that will help you to get new ideas already. And then success strategies. And then we have a Q&A and discussion. So a little bit about me. For those who don't know me, I have a bachelor degree of science in animal management. One of my majors was wildlife management and zoos, and in zoos there is a lot of positive reinforcement training going on behind the scenes, especially in the good zoos. Not all zoos have that, but the main zoos do. I'm the founder of HippoLogic and the HippoLogic Clicker Training Academy. I've been a certified centered riding instructor and riding instructor in the Netherlands, and I've been training and teaching riding lessons for over 25 years. I moved to Canada in 2012, and there I stopped being an instructor because I had to go through the traditional horse riding system, and I didn't want to do that because my ideas totally changed from shouting at my clients to explaining what I want them to do. Yeah, I taught hundreds of people clicker training their horses, and I tamed and trained a wild horse in 3 weeks. That is my horse Kira that you can see here. She was born in a nature reserve in the Netherlands, and then I thought it would take so long because I was using positive and negative reinforcement, but she really taught me to do positive reinforcement because that is what she wanted, and I listened. So that's where I came with the idea to build a system that I can teach other people, so other people can really do this at home by themselves. And then in 2016, Kira gets laminitis, and she was diagnosed with equine metabolic syndrome. And then my journey to clicker train overweight horses begins, because the vet, of course, says no more treats. You have to start lunging her. Exercising is so important. You have to put her on a diet, which meant at that time taking her out of the group, putting her in solitary confinement to manage the calorie intake. So I had to do that in the beginning, and then I saw it led to so much stress, and her welfare was like jeopardized in a different way. Instead of being sick, she got so stressed out of being alone. So that gave me so much challenges, and I found ways to just put it all together in a way that yeah, that was a win for her and a win for me. I wanted her to be happy and healthy, and I wanted to keep that relationship that I had built over decades of clicker training with her intact. And then she will, of course, wanted to be pain-free and healthy. So let's do a little bit of introductions. Just give you like 2 minutes or something, just short. Who are you? Where are you from? That's always nice to know. And then who's your horse? Like a little bit name, age, breed, what he's doing, what is your challenge with your horse. So I'll stop the share. So who would like to start off?
So, okay, I can start. My name is Ina, and I'm from Germany, live in the south of Germany, very close to Steffi's place. And yeah, I have horse experience over 35 years. My main interest from the beginning on was the classic dressage. I used to have a PRE. And I was very much into the Iberic style with this invisible aids, and I always was looking to be as soft as possible. But just it was about 7 years ago when I heard about the learning theory and clicker training with horses, and I said, okay, that's my way. I will do nothing more else, only positive reinforcement, and yes. And I will join in this course with a horse of a friend of mine. His name is Valur. He's an Icelandic gelding. He is 13 years old, and he was overweight since the age of 3. He was born in Iceland, was imported to Germany with 2.5 years. Yeah, and the person who imported him to Germany, he sold him because he was too fat. Yes, and that's now he's 13 years old, and the owner Luna is still struggling with the overweight of her horse.
And does he know any clicker training?
We have started together clicker training. Yes, summer last year, roundabout. Yes, he knows the basics. We do lessons once a month, and yes, he knows the target and the mat, and we just started with body targets, and he has a nice liberty walk. But when it comes to more to trot or to canter, then he gets very stressed. Because when she started the training with him, she came from this Intrinsen project and had no much knowledge about clicker training. So the first half year, we just worked on setting the basics and have a calm horse.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Who wants to go next?
I can do it next. My name is Stephanie, and I'm 40 years old. I live pretty close to Ina. She's my trainer, and she's helping me to work with Amor, with my Galleon, with positive training and positive reinforcement. And I think this is really a great journey and a great way to work with Amor, because I think he's the most sensitive being I've ever met on earth, really. And this helps him so much to come out, to find joy of movement and so on. I met him 3 years before. We are together for 3 years now. And he was in a very sad situation when we met, because the owner left him and he was alone and so on. And he got sick yes, sad and depressed and all these things. So, and then could take him, and we started caring for his health first, and these things went better and better. And I wanted to start working with him, and I was really amazed by these ideas of academic art of writing. But there's this really sensitive side, and he starts getting nervous. He wants to do it right, and he's like, what do you ask? What is there? This, maybe that, and so on. And then Ina came to our place, and I started thinking about maybe this is the right way, and it definitely is. We started about 1 year ago together now, and this changed so much in his way and the way he's really willing to work. And yes, of course, what really is important for me is this joy of movement for him, because he really is willing, and he's today he was in a great mood, and he started trot and so on, and he's offering this, but then he gets in display mode, so he gets like really a little bit too exciting, and I would like to work with him on this topic of duration. So, and maybe this turn from playing to duration, this would be a great way for us, I think.
Great. Yes. That is, yeah, we'll talk about that. Because that is one of the other key lessons for trainers. That is because it's called emotions, because I think as a horse owner and trainer of the horse, we are responsible not only for our own emotions, but also we are partly responsible for the emotions in our horses, because we can get them really frustrated unintentionally. But so there is a part that where the emotions of the horse the responsibility belongs to the trainer. So we will talk a lot about that too. Thank you.
Great.
Welcome, Loes.
Hi, I'm Loes. I'm 32 years old. I live in the Netherlands, in Drenthe, in the north of the Netherlands. I own horses for, I think, 20 years now. And 2 months ago, I got a new horse. That horse had a history of laminitis. The crusty neck, all the fat pads. He was standing on a full field of green grass, and the owner didn't had the time to do anything with him anymore. He's now 7 years old, and he knew all the basics. That's Ilya. But he knows all the basics in like touching and walking with you, but he did stand in a field away from the street and stuff, so he's very anxious about cars and all those things. And I really want to start with him with R+. I did start with him with the targets and stuff, but I discussed with Sandra that it would be better to do the course with a horse that knows R+ a little bit better. So I will not do it with this horse, but with one of my other horses, Smart. Smart is a 10-year-old paint gelding, and in the beginning of this year, when the nights were cold and the days were warm, he also was getting really fat. He didn't get laminitis, so I was in time to get him off the grass. But he's also too fat. And I started working with him with R+ November last year, the course of Mustang Medi. So he knows the basics of R+, and I ride with him too. Not with R+ yet, but yeah, as soft as I can. When I got him, I think 3.5 years ago, they ride him with a bit that was not very soft, and he was just biting a bit and hanging in a bit. And now I ride him bitless. He's soft to my hands, and I'm so happy with what we accomplished in those years.
Excellent. Well, it's a good thing that you're right, because that can help just quickly with building duration. But we'll talk about that later. So for now, we will start all the horses on the ground, because once they know on the ground what we want from them, it is so much easier to transfer that information and that knowledge and that experience into the saddle, and then it just clicks, because you already have the cues, and you have this environment that gives him information about what to do. And then if you would just be on his back, then in my experience, they say, oh, you want maybe the same thing, especially with positive reinforcement, because they are already used to offering behavior and then hear a yes or no. So they will automatically offer behavior under saddle if you trained it well on the ground, and then that makes it easier. Thank you. Let's get back to
Well, I want to add one thing I struggle with now on the ground. They walk with me, but I don't know yet how to let them move without me moving with them all the time.
Yeah,
so that's really something I hope to learn here.
Oh yeah, we'll absolutely talk about that a lot, because we'll talk about that. Yes, stay tuned.
That's nice.
Okay, excellent. The community rules, I normally have like a little paper where I explain everything a little bit more in detail. And of course, it's in the house and I'm in the guest house, so I don't want to get it. But respect in this group, we will respect each other, even if somebody has a different opinion or is in a different spot at their journey. We all do respect each other, because I believe we all come from the same place, that we want the best for ourselves and for our horses. And so I think we have that in common. We will be solution focused. So we will all, instead of saying like, you did this wrong, I don't think anybody will say that, but like, what can you do? Let's focus on solutions, because that is way more important to move on than if you stay stuck in what went wrong. We will be horse-centered. I believe that the horse is the one who cannot choose. So I think we have to facilitate the horse in who he is, his welfare, his health is very important. And that's also the reason why I started this course, because movement for overweight horses is super, super important. We will be focused on learning. We are all in a learning environment. I find it my job to keep this environment safe so everybody can learn. That goes also for in the Facebook group. What is in the Facebook group, we will keep in the Facebook group unless it is specifically asked if we could share something. If I would like to share a quote of one of you about the course, I will specifically ask, are you okay with me taking a screenshot or quote that? There's support. I will do anything I can to support you in these 14 days. Be generous with your knowledge, because I think sharing is caring, and the more we share, And I don't hold back on what I know. If there's something about riding, even though that's not in the scope of this course, I'll be willing to give you advice on that too. Be responsible for who you are in the group and your own emotions, and do the work, because only action leads to accomplishments. That's why I want everybody to have a horse to practice. I had many questions of people that wanted to be in the course because they just wanted to lurk and see what we are doing. But in my experience, you only get the experience if you go to the horse and the horse will say, no, I didn't read the memo, I wasn't on the Zoom call, I don't know what you mean, because that is where the learning is, and that is where we can put the theory into the practice and think, what tools do I have, like training tools, what ideas do I have, what can I do about the setup in order to make it clear to the horse. So therefore everybody needs a horse for this course. So the 3 options for movement is you move with your horse, and this can be very well the beginning, especially if horses have laminitis. This is where I had to start with Kira. I had to walk with her, so I had to move with the horse. There's also a pitfall for this, and that is that people start out moving with their horse, either with a target or just hand walk them, and then they stick with it. So once they think, well, ready for trot, they start to run and the horse will follow. In my opinion, moving with the horse is not really sustainable unless you're an athlete yourself. And really want to run in like sandy surfaces, like arenas, which makes it really, really hard. If you have 4 legs, it's easier, but for 2-legged people like us, it's not sustainable to keep up with the horse. If you want to let him trot for 10 minutes in an active way, it is really, really unsustainable. It was for me to trot with my horse. So I prefer to let the horse do the work. So the horse, it's the horse's exercise time. So the horse needs to do the exercise, and we are our horses' coaches, sport coaches. So that is what I'm aiming for. But moving with your horse is where we can start. And sometimes we have to start there. Kira had laminitis. I had to start her because she didn't move on her own, and moving with me really supported her also mentally. And then there's passive action, and there's the trainer is not involved. We will not talk about that today, but those are things like setting up a track system or making smaller adjustments to their management system, so you create that they move more on their own. But we will not talk about that today. So that is, for, in my opinion, 3 options to get movement. So moving with your horse is walking together in trails or in the arena, following a target, or play chase the tiger. But chase the tiger is like a short outburst of energy. So that is play, and that is something that can help you teach your horse to move forward, but it's not like that I would not suggest that to do that for 10 minutes or 15 minutes anyway. Depending on the horse, of course. Let your horse do the work. For instance, sending your horse around a reverse round pen, sending your horse from target to target. My favorite exercise is the reverse rectangle, which is an alternation of the reverse round pen. And we will talk about that, because if you can send your horse from target to target, the pros are that you can do a square or a rectangle, and if you have a rectangle, you have lines. Lines are way easier for the horse to walk or trot or canter than a circle, which is way harder on the body. And most overweight horses already don't like to move. So let's make it very easy and find ways to implement lines, straight lines in the movement for them. If you send your horse from target to target, you also can set it up really quickly and you break it down really quickly, because if you have 4 cones, that is like set up and taken down within a minute, where a reverse round pen, if you have a rope and all 6 or 7 cones, that will take much longer. And for some people, that is a hurdle. So it was for me, so that's why I came up with a reverse rectangle exercise. And then there's passive action when the trainer is not involved. So for instance, where you set up your water and your food on opposites of the space they're in, a track system, other horses, and also enrichment toys or friends that move them around. So those are all options for movement. I always say start with the end in mind. That is so important, because then just with a shaping plan, you have the end goal behavior, and then it's possible to divide it into smaller steps. So I hope you have a picture in your head, like the more you can envision it in movement or in pictures. You can take pictures from the internet, or just envision your horse, how he would move like in a canter towards you. In the previous group, there was somebody who had an excellent recall. Her horse, who was hard to move in training, came really galloping towards her 3 times a day. So at least the horse started with a little bit movement, and we knew she could do it. So start with the end in mind. What do you have in mind? Would you like to ride at liberty, maybe biking with your horse? And how would you like to have your horse react to you? Do you want like an active movement or more sluggish? Or so really, the more clear you are about the end goal, what you envision, the easier it is to get there. Because if you don't know what you want, it is really hard to accomplish it, because even if you kind of accomplished it, you won't even recognize it. But if you have a clear vision, that is super important. So let's get started. You have to start where your horse is at. For me, it meant 20-minute walks in hand. And because Kira had laminitis at that moment, and this was a tip that the vet gave me, he was very traditional. He was like, yeah, you have to start lunging. And I thought that was so clever. She was on painkillers and anti-inflammatory medication. And he said, you know what, before you exercise her, give her pain medication, because that will make it easier for her to do exercises. So that's what I did. I gave her medication, then I started to soaking my hay. And then after 20-30 minutes, when the medication started to kick in, then I took her out for in-hand walks. And it really started with in-hand walks, where later on she started to offer canter, and that didn't go within 2 weeks. It was a whole process, but without that start, I would never have gotten that trot offered. So think about, what is your starting point? What does your horse offer in this moment? Movement wise, like, does he offer, if he's at liberty, 10 steps of walk, or can you measure it in time? Like, okay, after 2-3 minutes of walk, he will just stop, or we can do 1 minute, or maybe he cannot walk on his own. He doesn't offer it, but if I walk, my horse will follow me. So this question is really, what does your horse offer at the moment? I really would like you to think about that. I will ask you later to make a baseline video. And in the baseline video, I just want you to video what you're doing at the moment with this horse movement wise, because that will be your baseline, and then we know what his starting point is. So what is his baseline? Does he know the cues? Does he have duration? What gaits do you start? Can your horse already offer trot or not? Most horses, I'm already very pleased if they can offer walk, and even if they don't offer it, we will, that is the goal of this course, that to set the environment up in a way that your horse will start to offer the behavior. So even if he just only follows you, it's good to know that he's not ready there to send him away on his own towards a target, or if he is, that is also even better. And then think about what works for your horse at the moment. If you cannot send him away to do the work by himself, what works? So what are you doing in this moment that that gives him exercise? Because this is all part of your starting point. Because if you're very clear about this is my starting point, and now we're going to work for 14 days, well, the horses won't work for 14 days. We will work for 14 days. Because I believe that your horse also needs a little break of training. So then it's clear to have a starting point, because only if you know where you are at your starting point, then you can measure your progress, because that is very, very important for several reasons. And then what would you like to accomplish? What is your end goal? Let's talk a little bit about learning strategies and awareness about how learning works. I think learning is fun. I know animals like to learn, and even animals like to work for their food. I've seen on many occasions, and clients also have the same stories, that Kira was wearing a grazing muzzle. And she got so good at it. In the beginning, she couldn't even eat from a slow feeder. So that was a whole process. Then I introduced a muzzle to her so I could get her in a field with other horses, because I think friends, freedom, and forage are very, very important, the 3 Fs. And Kira, after a while, Kira could even eat hay with her grazing muzzle, and even better, she could eat hay out of a slow feeder with her grazing muzzle. And one day I came and they just got hay. They were all in a group, and there were hay nets hanging, and there was loose hay, and she was wearing her muzzle, and she chose to eat from the hay net. And this was not a unique story. Once they know how to work the slow feeders or to work the muzzle, and they learn to work for their food, they often choose to work for their food. So that's a good thing, because we can use that in training. So we have 4 stages of learning, and we are all in one of these stages. And depending on the subject, we are in different stages. So there are subjects that I am at the bottom. I am unconscious incompetence. I have no idea what I don't know. It's ignorance bliss. It's those people that just bought a horse. They have no idea what's waiting for them. They think they're doing the right thing with whatever they are doing, and they might do it totally wrong because they have no idea. They're unconscious of their incompetence. We all have, maybe not in horses, but in other parts of our lives, we have unconscious incompetence. Then we become conscious incompetence. We notice that we don't know everything. We notice, we see challenges, we see struggles. For instance, we become aware that our horses don't want to go to the arena. We become, and we don't know how to solve that. So there is where the conscious incompetence happens. We know that we don't know things. Then we become conscious competence. We know, okay, if I use clicker training, if I use a target, I can get my horse to the arena. And then the last stage of learning is that you become unconscious competence. You don't know how competent you really are. And sometimes, especially for women, we think that we are not good enough because we cannot see the purple stage, the stage of unconscious competence, because we don't realize how much we already can do. So, like I said, we are all in one of those stages, and about movement training with positive reinforcement, nobody is in the yellow, because the yellow people who are in the yellow stage, the unconscious incompetence, have no idea. So those people are not here for this topic. So in the unconscious incompetence, you feel great because you don't know what you don't know. Ignorance bliss, you don't take any action. In the conscious incompetence, and this is where learning takes place, you feel uncomfortable. You get aware of not knowing, and maybe you even fall back to negative reinforcement because you have a lack of positive reinforcement solutions. And you search for support and for answers, but this stage really can feel uncomfortable. Oh no, I don't know what to do. And then depending on your personality, you handle it, and then you become conscious competence. So you feel confident in your positive reinforcement training skills, your problems become your challenges, and you can really use positive reinforcement as a communication tool in the bond with your horse. And the action that you're taking is that you're looking for new challenges. What can I do with positive reinforcement? How can I improve my skills? What can we do together? That is a really nice stage. And then the purple unconscious competence is that you're applying positive reinforcement as a second nature. You don't even realize, but you get predictable and reproducible results. And you're usually not aware of how skilled you really are, and the action you're taking is refining skills. I had people that friends that I met on Facebook, and then they happen to know they happen to be in the Vancouver area, so they decided, I invited them to visit Kira. And this person, she was not a clicker training person, but she's also not a horse trainer. So I invited her, and I really would like to show off some of the things that I trained with positive reinforcement. So I wanted to show her that Kira could lay down. I wanted to show her the long rein and the in-hand things that I did, and show her how to target. And it was a very, very rainy day, and it was in autumn. So I took her to the barn. Kira was in the field. There was like knee deep, like mud there. So I just called Kira, like I always do, and Kira just plowed through the mud, because I hate to be getting stuck in the mud. So I halted Kira, I got her through the gate, and she just moved with me fluently. All the horses kept out, and then I took her to the arena. I did my little performance. I was super happy because Kira was doing so well. And I said, "What did you like best?" She said, "Your horse came to you in the field through the mud." I'm like, "Yeah, but what of the exercises did you like best?" "Your horse came to you." I'm like, "Yes." And so this was really an example of unconscious competence. I didn't know that that was something that people, that made the most impression on her, that my horse came from the other end of the field through the mud just to be trained. That was like, oh yeah. So there was my unconscious competence. I had no idea that that would be something that people would be impressed by. And I see it more and more. And if you pay attention, this is one of the things that people are very much impressed with if they don't clicker train the horse. Sometimes people come even to me like, I want to teach my horse to come to me in the field. I'm like, well, that is basically a side effect of positive reinforcement. How to make your positive reinforcement training successful. Clarity is key. Clarity is your key to success. So we will do anything to make everything clear for you and for the horses. So that's why I would like to take a moment to talk about the system that I have. So what are symptoms of lack of clarity? So which one of them are familiar to you? Looking back on your training and realizing that you're doing the same thing over and over without getting the result you actually want or expect. Sometimes experience feelings of regret after training. Oh, shoot, I did the negative reinforcement thing already, or I noticed frustration, but you don't know what to do about that. Or you have a feeling that there's more to learn or that you could do better, and only if you knew how. And this was my major pitfall. I start training behaviors, but I never complete them. I got stuck. First, I got stuck because I did not know how to put behavior on cue. So I thought starting something new, starting Spanish walk, amazing. And then my horse did kind of Spanish walk. And then I didn't know how to put that on cue. So I started targeting. Yes, that was the order that I did things back then. And then, yeah, targeting, I don't know what to do with that. So start something new, because every time he saw the target stick, he wanted to touch it. And I'm like, I don't know. And once I nailed that part, that I realized, and I only realized that because I had a very good coach. And then I realized I couldn't build duration. So there I get stuck again. So every time I was training a behavior like Spanish walk, I didn't know how to get the second step and a third step and a fourth step. So after one step, and then moving to the other side of the horse, doing one step, and then I didn't know how to build that duration. So I got stuck. So I trained something else. So that was, and once I realized that every time I got stuck, I just moved to the next behavior. So I had, like, when I realized this, I had about 20 behaviors that was not on cue and not on duration. So I didn't complete the behaviors that I was training because I had a lack of clarity. I didn't know. Or you feel dissatisfied, frustration, or you lose your joy in riding or training your horse because you have this frustration. Or, and this is also that I noticed in myself, I really started to procrastinate. I didn't feel like going to my horse, or I didn't feel like training my horse because I was stuck, and I didn't realize it, that I was stuck because I had a lack of clarity. So what happens if we're vague or we're confused about the what, when, or the how? Well, you can go anywhere and you end up the where. So start with the end in mind, because if we are very clear about our what, when, well, the when is now in this course, and how, for instance, you want to go to Rome, that's your what. What do you want? I want to go to Rome. When and how? Well, I want to go by plane. And then I want to take the train, and then you know exactly how you're going to get there, and then you can be successful. But if you don't know where you're going, you will never end up where you want to be. So picture what your desired end goal behavior looks like. So the pictures that I showed in the beginning, this will be also part of your homework. What does it look like? What do you really have in mind? And don't be afraid to dream big. Think about what cues will you be using? How effortless will it look like, or will it be for the horse? And how long would you like your horse to offer movement? When I started tracking my training, that was before Kira got laminitis, and that was with my first horse. I wasn't really doing positive reinforcement. I was using treats, but it was completely different without a marker. But I realized that 5 minutes of trot was really, really, really long, a little bit too long for my pony at that moment. So if you think like 10 minutes of trot, do you realize how long 10 minutes really is for your horse? And if that is something that you would like to train him for duration for 10 minutes, that is amazing. But it's really important to think about, because most people think trot and then ask how long, like in duration or in distance, do you want him to trot like 5 times around the arena before he stops or offers something else? Or is just the long side of the arena good enough for you? Be really clear about what you would like to see. And then how does your horse offer this forward movement in your mind? Is he energetic, athletic, happy? Or because the trot that is like sluggish and I have to trot and it's just not a walk, looks totally different than a horse that really uses his hindquarters and really carries himself and is energetic and strong. So it's really important to have at least a little bit of an idea, like what do you want it to look like? Because if you have no idea, in the Netherlands, I worked a lot with Fjorden horses, and they are, well, they're pretty slow. They just totally move different from an Andalusian. So their trot was a different trot than I would expect from a different breed. So that's also something that you have to take into account. What kind of movement fits your horse? And then what would you like your horse's state of mind to be like? Do you want him to be happy and offering it? Or let's trot is also good enough for you? And what purpose has this behavior? How will this make your life and your horse's life better? Because it's also good to realize when Kira, well, it's good to realize that sometimes horses have to do what they don't want to do or not yet capable of doing. In Kira's case, when she had laminitis, she was in a lot of pain and she had to move because the movement was would help her with her blood flow, would help her with managing the infection in her hooves. So movement was super, super important. Also, movement for equine metabolic syndrome horses is very important because of their blood sugar levels. So I really had to focus on how this painful walks in the beginning would improve her life over the coming weeks, because I wasn't moving her too much because she didn't like it. And when I was thinking of doing her a service by letting her choose not to move, actually I was doing her a disservice, and then she ended up with laminitis. So it's sometimes you really have to think about like the end results. And if it is aversive, think about how we can make it more pleasurable for them. And for Kira, because she was in so much pain, like giving her painkillers first, moving with her really helped because we already had that bond, and just walking with her and synchronizing our steps together were little things that really made a positive impact and really helped her do it. So be very specific about what you want. You might not know this at the end of the day, but it's really good to keep this in the end, in the back of your mind, like, what do I really want? What are my goals? And how do I want it to look like? And what is the results I'm aiming for? Let's have a little sip. So positive reinforcement training in 3 steps. That is the 6 key lessons for horses, the 6 key lessons for trainers, that is you, and HippoLogic's proven positive reinforcement training system. The system is based on the key lessons. The benefits of having a system, you always know your next step. So there you have it, you have clarity. It's easy to recognize if and where in the process of training you get stuck, because that makes it so much easier to solve. Like when I realized that I didn't know how to put behavior on cue, I just had no idea that was where I was stuck. Once I knew it, I could find somebody easily that could help me putting behaviors on cue. And then the next time I got stuck was with the duration, like the targeting was just target was less than a second. And I had no idea how people trained their horses to put their nose near the target and stay there. But once I recognize it's the duration where I get stuck over and over, I could really easily find somebody who could help me with that particular step in training behaviors. You get predictable successes because once you know you have a system, there is a generalization that we all go through, like all those phases of learning for us, but also for the horse, and you get predictable successes, which is amazing. It also motivates you as a trainer because you have clarity and you know exactly where in what phase you are with a specific behavior. Having the clarity in yourself also really helps giving your horse clarity. And if your horse has clarity, you can prevent frustration. You can learn to recognize the signs that they are opting out mentally, or they're getting distracted, or they're getting frustrated. And the more clarity you can give them, the more easier they learn. So I'll just go over the key lessons really quickly because your horses already know the ones that we need. Table manners. Table manners is safe behavior around food and food reinforcers. I put this bold because that is the thing that we need in this course. If the horses don't know how to take treats or get very frustrated about them, then it's easy, then it's harder to train them for movement. Patience, I called it patient because the horse, first of all, has to learn to wait for your cues and not throw all kinds of behaviors at you. I call it the default behavior. And for me, key lesson patience is that you teach a horse to align next to you and relax. So the relaxation is also important. Targeting is something that we are going to use in this course. Nose targeting, mat training, because that's targeting for their feet. Then head lowering and backing are also 2 behaviors that can is a foundation behavior for all more complex behaviors in like riding, haltering. Head lowering is really useful. For trainers, the key lessons for trainers: principles of learning and motivation. Know how learning works, how you can motivate yourself and your horse. the principles of learning and motivation, that is also the quadrant with positive, negative reinforcement and positive, negative punishment, to understand that. A training plan, we will talk about a training plan, start with the end in mind, and then go deeper and shaping plans. So we will do shaping plans for each individual horse in this course. Then we need accountability, because we all have this enthusiasm to start, but we have to keep ourselves accountable. And a group is a really, really good way to keep yourself accountable, to show up for the trainings, to show up and share your successes or share your results. Because the more you are keeping yourself accountable, that means that you're doing the work. And sometimes you just need to know, okay, on Friday I will share this video, so I better start training today because it's Monday or Wednesday. I teach you how to use a training journal. I have a very easy one for this course. It takes minimum effort to fill in, because some people really, it's hard to start writing about their training, but once you know where to focus on, it will really help you in also measuring your progress and realizing if you get stuck and where you get stuck. So it's really important to start using a training journal, and I will provide you with a template for that. And then, like what I said before, emotions, equine and human, we are responsible for our own emotions. If we get angry, frustrated, we don't want to take it out on the horse. And we also have to realize that if we are super happy one day, that we also act differently. So we get different reactions from our horses. Maybe our horse thinks, oh, normally you don't jump up and down. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't even know what to offer or what to do. So, and like, I think it's our responsibility as trainer, as humans, that we try to prevent negative emotions in training, like frustration or anger, fear, those kind of things. So how does this fit in a system? You start with a training plan. That's your overall goal. You want to get your horse in shape. You want to do it with positive reinforcement. You want to have forward movement. You want to get your horse happy. All these things are in your training plan. For me, a training plan is the bigger goal. Then you kind of list all the behaviors that are part of it. How do you want them to behave and move in walk, in trot, in canter, on the ground, on the saddle? What do we have to do before we can do that? Well, maybe we have to start teach him mat training. Well, you already done that, but that is how it works. You list all the behaviors as much as possible that are a part of it. And then you decide what to train first. You can make a list of the behaviors your horse already can do, like targeting or mat training, and then what is next. When I got Kira out of the wild, I was like, okay, I did this. The training plan is she's 1 now, but I want her to turn her into a riding horse and perform shows with her. So I listed all the behaviors. I did that with my coach. And then we decided what to train first. I thought haltering, because she is untamed. So I made a shaping plan. So I divided the haltering up, like she has to sniff the halter, and then she has to put her nose into the halter, and so on. And I made that shaping plan based on the principles of learning and motivation. How do I do it with positive reinforcement? How do I do my setup? How does she learn best? And so on. And then I had to practice, because only the practice you get the feedback of your horse. So there I was in front of Kira, in front of her stable with a halter, and she was like, nope. And she tried to climb over the wall in the opposite corner. That was the feedback of Kira. I'm super scared. I don't want to have to do anything with you or with the halter. So you practice and you get feedback from your horse. And here's where I needed the accountability to do it over and over and keep practicing. So I had a coach that helped me. And I wrote a training journal to do the evaluations. Oh, Kira is super afraid of me. What do I do? Well, here are the emotions. The heart represents the positive emotions, and the little lightning bolt, all the negative emotions. Kira was super fearful. I was disappointed, but I really loved her. So I had to adjust. So sometimes you have to adjust your plan. That's what I did. Kira didn't want to be haltered, so my plan was to approach her, because haltering was lumping, it was way too big, was way too much of a goal for her. In order to halter her, I asked myself, what do I have to do in order to halter her? Well, I had to approach her. I skipped that step. So this is how it works. You plan, you decide what to train first. So either you pick a different behavior that works better after you get feedback of your horse, or you adjust your shaping plan, because sometimes the behavior is still the best choice, but you have to alternate your shaping plan. And then you go practice again, and then your horse says, yes, I get it, I want to do it, I'm learning, or still like, I'm getting frustrated, let's play. No, we don't want to play. I want you to be calm, emotions, and so on. So if you have this process, a visualization that can help you to realize where you need support. So for instance, and this is a training for movement. So this is like the system. You start with a goal. For instance, forward movement trot for X amount of time, like 1 minute or 10 steps. I'm just saying something so you make a shaping plan. How can you make your setup in a way that your horse wants to offer trot? And then you go practice. You get feedback of your horse. And then you ask yourself, do I get consistent behavior? Do I get consistently a trot? In the beginning, the answer is no, not yet. And then you either go back to practice or you go back to your shaping plan, depending on the situation. And then one day there will be training that your horse will offer consistently the trot. So then you can move on with maybe adding a verbal cue, trot, or a physical cue, an arm or hand signal. Sometimes your physical cues, your body cues are already in the training setup, but I call that a training cue. Like it's the visual appearance of the target stick, or the visual appearance of the cone, or your movement, or that you help move with your horse, that is giving your horse the information, but that is not the final cue that you want to train, because you maybe want to just point and say, go around that cue in trot. So for me, there's a difference between the training cues, the cues that your horse picks to get information about what he needs to do, and the ones that you decide on what your final cues will be. For instance, a verbal cue, trot. Then after you have that consistent behavior, then you can change your reinforcement schedule from, in the beginning, you click 100% for trot, and then once your horse offers it consistently because he knows that you want him to trot, then you can change your reinforcement schedule in order to strengthen the behavior. Because if you keep clicking and treating in a 100% reinforcement schedule, you become too predictable, and the horse will decide and make a deliberate decision if he wants to do it or not. And usually you see a decrease in the behavior. You also need to realize that there are context shifts. Horses learn in a context, and you can use that to your advantage. For instance, lots of horses, especially traditionally trained horses, will offer faster movement towards the entrance or exit of the arena. So that is where you start, where you are at, and you can use that to your advantage, because most horses just want to get out of the arena, so that's why they are heading for the exit. But this is the context where they learn. They have learned it in the arena to trot, and they can do it. But then maybe you want to take your horse off premises, you want to take him on the road, or you want to take him to another arena because in a clinic or for performance or whatever, and then your horse suddenly doesn't perform because the context is different. The context is the setup, the environment, everything that is there that gives the horse information. So once your horse knows and offers trot consistently, then you can say, okay, I want to generalize this behavior trot, and I want to generalize it as and make the cue really attached to the behavior. So now I'm not doing that only towards the exit of the arena, but I want my horse to trot past the exit. I want my horse to trot in a different environment. So the cue is the information he needs for this behavior, instead of just paying attention. Is there a cone? That means trot. Is there a person in the middle? That means trot, or whatever. So it's the same thing that we can maybe sing so beautifully when we are in the car or at home, and we can do the whole song flawlessly, because that is our context. We are at home, we're alone, but put that person on a stage with 5,000 people listening and put a mic in front of their face. Chances are, because the context is so different, that the behavior of singing that particular song just doesn't go that well. And that's what we need to realize. Context shifts are really a part of training, and we want to train the horse in as much as context shifts as possible to let them generalize the behavior, so the behavior becomes really strong, independent of the environment where they are in. Then duration, you want to work on duration of that particular gait. Then maybe you can start training a specific behavior sequence, and you can get an exercise program, like, okay, we do like 5 minutes of walk or 10 minutes of walk, some bending, and then 2 minutes of trot, and then walk. And so you can put that into a behavior sequence, because sometimes it also really helps to give the horse, especially in exercising, a certain predictability. So they know, okay, this aversive movement will be over in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes. And then once they get stronger and get better at it, their body will provide them with endorphins, like because the goal is to get them into kind of a runner's high, or at least think after the movement, that felt good to move my body, because in this moment they are probably not experiencing that. And then you want to fade out your tools. You don't want to click for every step of trot, because that's not sustainable. You don't want to run with your target. We already talked about that. You want to fade your own movement out as much as possible, so your horse will do more and you will have to do less. The target is a training tool, and it's really meant to give your horse clarity, and it must not become a crutch that you're reliant on. Like, okay, without the target stick, my horse will not trot or will not go walk around that cone, because the target stick is so much a part of the context that they cannot do the behavior without the target stick. Because one day Well, I call myself kind of a lazy trainer. I don't want to have those tools all the time. I just want to be at liberty and tell my horse, go there in that speed and for that amount of time, instead of that I always need a target stick or need a reverse round pen, or I just want to train more and have less tools, because there will be a day that you don't have that tool, or your target stick breaks, or you forget it at home, or it's still in your car and you don't have it, but you do want to train. So you really want the training to be the main part instead of your tools. Even with clicks and food reinforcers, you also want to be able to ask your horse to do stuff, instead of your horse is like, oh, I don't see a treat pouch, so I won't do it. No, you want your horse to do it because you have trained your horse to do it. So these are all parts of stimulus control. So success strategies. How do you overcome your challenges? Well, get clarity. What is the problem? Talked about that. Find the cause. It's really important, and this is the key lesson, principles of learning and motivation. Why does this happen? Like, some horses don't want to move, and why doesn't the horse want to move? Is it a moving away from or avoidance motivation? My horse didn't want to move because she was in pain. Or is there something else? My horse doesn't want to move forward because there's grass there and she really wants to move towards the grass. So is it the moving away or avoidance motivation in their body, or is it the moving towards why you don't get that specific result? It's really important to find out what is going on in your horse's mind. Why does this happen? What is his motivation if you overcome a challenge? And then you can solve the cause. How do I do this? For instance, if horses don't want to go into the trailer, depending if it is a moving away or avoidance of the trailer, you have a different strategy than when the horse doesn't go into the trailer because I'm moving towards energy. For instance, a moving away or avoiding energy is, I'm fearful, I don't like the trailer, I'm afraid of the trailer. So you work on the horse's fear, because that is a different training strategy than that you realize my horse has no problems going into the trailer because he's not afraid, but at this particular moment he wants to be with his friend, so he wants to move towards his friend. So that is a moving toward energy. So in that case, maybe you can bring a friend near the trailer or even in the trailer to solve the problem of your horse not going into the trailer. So it's really important to realize what is going on in your horse's mind. Lots of it is guessing, educated guessing, not labeling, like he's afraid, he's stupid, he's dumb, but really think like, is it a moving toward or moving away from energy? And then work from there. So examples of common challenges and how to overcome them. So let's talk about this. You do more than your horse and you don't know how to turn that around. Like, you start to trot and your horse trots with you, and then the horse stops and you are still running and you're like, oh shoot, what do I do? Or it's hard to get the horse to offer movement in the first place. And this is also what I see a lot. People just don't give the horse to. So this is my 1 hour signal. So we'll have a little break in between. I'll just do this slide. So a common challenge is that people don't give the horse the opportunity to offer movement. It's always the person that moves first, and then the horse just react on what the trainer is doing. Oh, my trainer moves, I will follow. So therefore, that is a system that you build it upon, and the horse thinks, I will only move if my person is moving. Oh, my person starts running, I'll start trot. Oh, my person stops, I stop. Or the horse thinks, oh, normally I stop here at this cone. What are you doing running there? So once we know how to let the horse offer the movement, and it's really, really small, then you can work from there, and then the rest will get easier. So your horse stops moving before you do. Is something that I see a lot. You can't build duration in movement. I've seen that a lot because people keep at that 100% reinforcement schedule. Then the horse thinks, well, where's my click? Normally I get my click here. So the horse doesn't learn to offer duration. You run out of ideas to get your horse moving, or your horse gets frustrated and loses interest in training, or he gets into, for instance, play mode. Out of frustration, they can also move into play mode. You struggle with the pressure of your environment. The vet, the barn manager, your friends, the professionals all say, start lunging, and it's really hard to keep with what you really want. I've been there myself. It is hard. And when I started, Kira, on this journey, it literally started with hand walks for 20 minutes every day for a few weeks. That's where we started. And then slowly she offered more active walk, and I start to click for that. And then finally she started like, oh, do I get maybe a click and treat for trot? So she started to offer that movement when we were walking on the street. And it was a different journey. Like when I would have followed the instructions of the vet, I would have started, I did that on day one, round penning her or lunging her. And there you get like the trot immediately, or so many minutes duration in trot or walk, but not with positive reinforcement, because with positive reinforcement, you need your horse to offer that behavior. You don't force him to the behavior and then click and treat. No, you set it up. So your horse has to do the thinking, and your horse needs to be willing to do it. So in the beginning, it looks different than with negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement creates the behavior kind of right away. Oh, your horse doesn't move. I just threaten with a target stick. No, training stick is the word. Or whip, like let's go. And the horse decides that for his own safety, he better go. So you get trot and canter immediately. In positive reinforcement, you don't get it immediately, but once you get it, the horse will offer it, and more and more. And while with negative reinforcement, you always have to have that, usually that threat with you. With positive reinforcement, there are so many ways to reinforce your horse without particularly food. You have more strategies. So it looks different. The journey looks different, and the outcome is also a bit different. Common challenges. So maybe your horse's job is to be calm and move slowly. And in positive reinforcement training for overweight horses, you want that action, you want that activity. In the last course, we had people that worked with therapy horses. So their work, their job was being negative reinforcemently trained and be calm and move slowly while they were being overweight. So in the clicker training part, they had to be more active. So that was a challenge for them. So what are your challenges? Think about that. Well, the play mode was one of the things. That you wanted your horse to move with joy, and also the duration. And for Ina, it was not I don't have that very clear what your thing was.
To have a calm, very balanced, emotionally and physical balanced kind of dressage going forward in a rhythm, so that I can lengthen the strides and make them shorter, and to be able upwards and downwards transitions, things like that.
Excellent.
With a
Yes.
horse that is not just throwing legs on me.
No. Well, that's well, we start where the horse is at, and then depending on
exactly.
how you want to move forward, because it's not your horse and you have a different kind of slightly different purpose maybe with this horse, because you want to bring that athletic goal into that. I will talk about that. But that's also, it is a process, but I will give you.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
I know, I will give you all the foundation.
Yes, this is the big goal. The first goal is to just make him move with joy.
Excellent. Yes. So yeah, that exactly. Yeah, you understood everything I said. Who wants to have like a 2-minute break?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'll recording. So we will start a little bit talking about the most common challenges, and it will be helpful for you if you think, well, if I have this problem, or maybe only a part of this problem, like the solutions, what can I do? Or with the solutions, are there solutions that you offer that maybe in another context, in the context of my training, I can do something with that. So yeah, experiment, be creative. So what is the problem if you do more than your horse does? Usually people don't have shaping plans. The training is lumping, like in this picture, this is what I also did. This is a question, this is when I was Kira, teaching to following a target. I was very much lumping. I was like, I can just do like 10 rounds. I didn't actually thought that, but the general idea, like you do way too much and then the horse gives up and doesn't want to follow anymore. My expectations were way too high and frustration kicked in me and in the horse. I'm like, why is this not working? And the solutions are to make a shaping plan and really make it divided into smaller steps, and really also track your training. Where is your horse at? Does he want to follow the target for 5 steps and you're expecting 20? Or is your horse offering 5 steps and you want 6? That's a big difference for the horse. So making a shaping plan really helps. Start where your horse is at. That is so super important. Look at your reinforcers. Maybe they're too high and your horse gets distracted by them or gets frustrated. Where's my treat? Where's my treat? I love it so much. I want it now. Or your reinforcer is not appetitive enough, or it's too predictable. It's like enough value, but after 10 hay cubes, your horse thinks, no. And I must say, in my experience, mares are easier because they are so much food oriented. Kira was like, whatever, there was almost no food that was too low. She was, but there was a lot of exercises were too high. And then, okay, I'm lumping because what I ask is too much for her, but she always wanted to eat. Well, there were some, I had some experiences when I was riding her and do positive reinforcement that I offered a treat and she didn't take it, or she spit it out. And then that was clear, like, okay, I have to change my reinforcers. You can also improve your setup most of the time. If you do more than your horse does, you have to change your setup, and I will help you how. And also adjusting your expectations, because usually we fall into the pitfall that we have this vision in mind, or like, look what she did with her horse. She started right away with cantering, and then you have that expectation, but you are maybe not even aware of that expectation that you have, and then you get frustrated and you also don't know why. And then that's because we all do these comparisons with other people, because we are social animals, so we want to fit in. So if she's doing that with her horse, we want to do that, because in general we want to fit in and do what everybody else is doing. That's why it makes it sometimes super hard to do the positive reinforcement training while you are maybe in a negative reinforcement boarding facility. But that's a human thing. If your horse doesn't offer movement, what is the problem? You don't know where to start, your expectations are too high, or frustration kicks in, or all of the above. So again, start where your horse is at. I cannot emphasize that enough, but it's really important. What can my horse do? So find an environment, a setup, and ask yourself, where does my horse move? Like what I said, years ago, I noticed, especially in my riding, when I was doing centered riding, and people wanted to just do stuff in trot or canter, and those horses were traditionally trained, I noticed that they wanted to move towards the exit. So teaching a horse to canter, especially like a young horse that never had cantered with a rider, asking that horse to canter towards the exit was way easier, because the horse offered that almost already, than moving away from the exit. So I used that environmental thing to my advantage. Now I would think, why does the horse want to exit the arena? Let's work on that. But that is where we start. Well, if your horse wants to move towards a target, use that. And how can you reinforce that moment? Find things that interest your horse, targets or trails, or walking together with friends. If your horse is really reluctant to move at all, like Kira was, she didn't offer anything because she was in pain, which totally made sense. But if I walked with her, and I walked on the street because she was boarded at a dead end street, so we could walk on the street safely. I walked in the middle because at the sides there was lush green grass. Well, doing the grass training the year before really helped, because she didn't want to go. Well, she didn't go to the grass. Don't know if she didn't want to, because she was also on a restricted diet. And just moving with her and moving in her, in sync with her, those are things that she really liked, because you can get that group feeling with you and your horse. So, and also if your horse doesn't want to move, just moving, following another horse can help. And if that is where you start, if that are the first 5 trainings, yeah, you can use that to your advantage. So think out of the box. And then look at your reinforcers. Are they actually reinforcing your timing? Of course, you can also offer more clarity, maybe go back to using a bridge signal, or and very, very, very generous with appetitive. And sometimes you don't have to use food reinforcers if you want to amp up those appetitives, but just a food reinforcer with a verbal praise and a high energy and saying that you're so proud will really have a different feel for the horse than click treat without any emotions. So you can also use your own emotions to reinforce the horse. And if you want to get your horse to offer movement, stop training before your horse stops moving. Like if your horse does that like 3 times in a row, stop before he kind of refuses to do it again. Give your horse a break, maybe a break for the rest of the day, or a break in between short sessions. will really help, because if you go on and on with movement until he refuses, that is a signal that you went on too long. And it's better in the beginning. It is not yet about losing weight. It's not yet about burning off those calories. In the beginning, it is getting your horse in the right mindset, because once you have him in the right mindset, that he's willing to offer, that he knows that you will not over ask him, and that it's built up slowly, so it will become pleasurable, then you can move on to more and longer, and burning off those calories and building up those muscles. That's probably not yet where we will be the first week. Well, I'm sure we're not doing that the first week, depending on where your horse is at. If your horse stops before you do, what is the problem? Ask yourself, what is the problem? Your horse tunes out because of training, or so that is moving away energy, or something else is more interesting. So moving towards, my horse stops moving because he stops to graze. It's a moving towards the food, or his friends are there. He stops because he wants to know what his friends are doing. It's a moving towards his friend's energy. So depending on what the motivation of that behavior is, your expectations could be too high, or your rate of reinforcement, ROR, is too low. You don't click enough, you don't feed enough, or both, and frustration can kick in. So again, start where your horse is at, find where your horse does move, when does he do that, and could you reinforce that moment? Are your reinforcers actually reinforcing? How can you offer more clarity? Be generous and stop before your horse does. If he stops on a regular basis, find out when does he stop. Okay, he always stops after 10 steps of trot. Ask him to stop after 8, because then he can also trust you that he doesn't have to say no, because you want him to say yes, 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 more and more. Did I skip one thing? Yeah. So sometimes if your horse stops before you do, sometimes you have to offer more predictability. So this is the training. That's what I did with Kira when she had laminitis. This is the 20-minute walk that we do. And we did that over and over again. So she could get the feel of what is 20 minutes, and they will anticipate on it. And then we did something else, what she liked. Or if your horse stops before you want him to stop, you can, a solution can be that you have to offer more novelty, because the brain loves predictability, but also novelty. So there's a balance, like, okay, I know that my horse is just kind of opting out at this point because of duration or time or distance. So, ta-da, I have a special target here. And then your horse is like, what? You never use this target. Like, oh, and then they perk up. So those are things that, yeah, find those things. And that's the beauty of being in a group. If you see somebody else, oh, maybe I can do this with my horse, but I have that. So find something. If you can build duration in movement, ask yourself again, what is causing this? Some horses stop before the bridge slash appetitive happens, because they know, like, okay, it's you sometimes were too predictable. So track your training. Is he really offering less or the same duration in that behavior, or did your expectations were too high? Like, okay, he's always doing 10 steps. Now let's go for 20. And he stops at 18 and you're thinking like, okay, this was a failure. While you don't realize he offers 8 more steps than he usually does. So you can count his steps. In the beginning, we really have to take baby steps, and there's where we measure. So you either measure the amount of paces, like the steps, or the time in seconds, like stopwatch on your phone can help, but then you have to look at something. So I usually like count the steps in the beginning, 5 steps, 2 steps, 1 step, or you measure the distance. If you're going from cone to cone, like where is it where he stops? And do you get more or the same or less? Because only if you track it, you know what is really going on. Again, look at your reinforcers. Are they actually reinforcing? Do you get more of the offered behavior? First of all, your horse needs to offer that behavior. One time this was really clear to me is that I had my usual reinforcers for Kira, which were hay cubes. And I asked her to back up, and she did 2-3 steps, and I asked her to stop, and she did it. I clicked and reinforced because I hadn't done that 4 times, so then I use a bridge again. And then I noticed, oh, I have sunflower seeds in the other pocket. So I gave her sunflower seeds first, and then I asked her to back up. And I was so surprised. She backed up and backed up and backed up and backed up. And she went all the way to the arena and like 15 to 20 meters or more. And I'm like, oh, you're okay, because I wanted her to stop on my cue, not on her own cue. I was so surprised, and she got like a handful of sunflower seeds. And then I didn't want to ask it anymore because I felt, wow, I got the most duration, and she was also doing it in a straight line, which was amazing. Well, I trained her to do it, but that was really an example. Like, yes, the sunflower seeds were obviously more reinforcing than hay cubes. She did do the behavior, but by showing her this is what you can earn, I got really more duration. Sometimes you have to offer more clarity, use bridge signal, be generous, more repetition depending on the situation. But these are some of the solutions, and stop before your horse does. So you stay in charge, and he doesn't stop because he doesn't want to do it anymore, but you show him, I understand that we need to do something else now. And again, sometimes more predictability or more novelty, depending on the situation. What if you run out of ideas to get your horse moving? Maybe your horse seems bored, or you seem bored. And then ask yourself, is it you or is it the horse that needs novelty? Because sometimes it's just in our heads. I have heard so many people say like, oh, it's boring to give him the same treats over and over and over again, or the same dinner, or the same thing. But they also like predictability and are a little bit animals of habit too. It can also be that your horse won't move at all, and then you are running out of ideas to get your horse moving. So track your training to measure your actual results. And also predictability can be your friend. Like what I said, like Kira knew in the first few weeks of training her that there would be only 20 minutes walk. And I alternated, and I also experimented with walking towards the end of the road where there was a corner and back, and just did that for a few days. So she knew, okay, at the corner I can go back. And even though it still hurts a little bit, because I assumed that even though she got painkillers, she still was uncomfortable. I did other things, I will talk about that later. But then she started to anticipate, okay, until the corner and then back, and then we do something else that is fun. So her reluctance to get out on the street for our daily walk lessened and lessened. So that was where I noticed that she started to enjoy the movement more and more. Yeah, and find out of the box, out of the traditional box ideas by changing your setup, your environment, surround yourself with positive reinforcement trainers, look at training of other species, like dog trainers have amazing ideas about training their dogs or other species, that maybe you can take that idea and change it to your horse's situation. And also realize that most of us are in an environment that is set up and meant to do negative reinforcement training. So yeah, if there is a round pen and you don't want to be in the round pen, like what else can you do? Maybe you can just walk over the premises back and forth if you don't have a road or you don't want to go over the road. Just find ways. You don't have to train in the arena. You don't have to train in a round pen if you have a round pen. Like you want, like look at your goal. You want your horse to get moving. Where else can we do that? How can we make that easy? Like straight lines. Where can I find a straight long line? For me, it was on the road, but there were also, I've also boarded my horse that I didn't want to go on the road, but I could do it on the premises. Like, yeah, and I was walking around in areas where horses normally are not trained. But look at what your goal is. And sometimes your horse gets frustrated and opts out. So when does that happen? And can you recognize what happens before that happens? What happens before your horse gets frustrated or moves into play and gets a real change of energy? What happens so that you can find a trigger and yeah, notice what happens before this particular thing happens. Or the horses get distracted. What distracts him? For instance, if you train when it's dinner time or when all the other horses are getting out of the pasture back to their stables where there is food, those are not maybe the best times to train. Sometimes they are the best times because they all get energized and they want to be a part of it. So how can you use your environment to the advantage of exercising your horse? Your horse sometimes just opts out because he does not understand you what is expected and he just gives up finding the answer. If horses are more traditionally trained, they do that sooner, and then you have to adjust your training, or your training gets so predictable the horse just makes a deliberate decision to stop engaging. So it's really good to look into what do you think the cause is, and then it's just trial and error. Like what happens if you provide more clarity? Use shaping plans, change your repetitives, limit the distractions. You can use your horse magnet. I have a video where Kira is, I'm exercising Kira, and Kira got distracted by the blackberry leaves because there's a lot of blackberries growing around the outside arena, and her friends in the adjacent paddock. And then I have trained that target stick so well, and it has such a strong positive reinforcement for history. It becomes a horse magnet. So I wave my magic wand literally, and she's like, oh, the target, there's where I need to be. So that is how you can distract your horse from what is going on and create that moving towards. And also give your horse the opportunity to check it out. Okay, you want to see what's going on in the horse paddock next to you? I'll just wait. And then I give the next cue for walk on or trot on, because sometimes we just have to time our cues in order to increase the successes. Because if the horse is distracted, we all, well, I don't know about you, but when I was still traditionally riding and the horse was kind of about to spook something and they just stop and freeze, what we did was lag aid, more lag aid, maybe whip, more lag aid, but the horse doesn't listen because the horse is over there. So it has no use. You only teach him, if you teach him at all, to ignore your signals. And go forward, back to basics, because going back to basics is moving forward. And then increase the novelty aspect in training. And some people also struggle, this is the last one, struggle with pressure of the environment. You feel rushed because you are just literally reinforcing step by step. And people that are traditionally trained have no idea. The only thing that they see is one step and a treat, one step and a treat. How is that possible? But in the bigger scheme of things, that is where we start with positive reinforcement. We might feel inadequate or frustrated because the results are not there right away as in traditional training. If you have a whip and you chase your horse around, he will offer. Well, he will go do the cantering. Well, if you have to teach him how to do that, that's a different way and it looks different. So we can feel pressure from the environment, and there you have to trust the system of positive reinforcement. And you all have more than enough experience by now, but you maybe need a reminder that this will work. Or you receive well-meant advice from friends, barn managers, get riding, get started, stop feeding, or whatever. Or you feel pressure from the professionals, like your vet or your farrier, or the trainer or barn manager. And what helped me was to think like, okay, the vet is saying, lunge your horse, get exercising. And I was just thinking, okay, what is his goal and what is my goal? And how can I make this a win-win? So his goal was to have like a healthy horse, because a horse was his client, so I could be happy about the results. I wanted to get my horse healthy and happy. So, wow, we have the same goal, only he wanted to just, of course, they want for you to get results quickly. So the crash diet and the lunging would give quicker results. But I was not willing to jeopardize the relationship that I had with my horse, because after one day of round penning, I immediately realized I don't want to do this. So I just did it my way, but with the same result. So it went a little slower in the beginning, but it paid off. And what I liked about that was that the vet also saw that it did pay off. So that keep that in mind, what your goal is, and that you have the same goal in mind as maybe your farrier or your vet, because you want your horse to get healthy and happy. This is about the mindset. Realize that in positive reinforcement, the start of training a behavior almost never looks like the end result unless you capture the behavior. Like what I said before, if you chase your horse away with a whip, you get that end result behavior in a few minutes. In positive reinforcement, you start, okay, I want to do the canter. I have to start where the horse is at, and maybe just with one step. So your horse needs to act the behavior in order for you to be able to reinforce it. In negative reinforcement, the horse doesn't have to offer anything. And worse, it is not expected from the horse to offer initiative. He just needs to react. Like the trainer acts with the whip and the horse reacts. But in positive reinforcement, we wanted that the horse starts to offer something, and track your training so you know you are getting results. Focus on the common goals. Your horse needs to lose weight instead of the means. Like how you do it, the vet wouldn't care less. But if he sees that you're on the same page as him, and that you're not feeding the treats in order to let your horse stay overweight, but that you're actually are getting results and working towards the same goal, they will also that will also really help. So start where your horse is at, no matter how small it is, and build from there with a shaping plan. I will help you keep yourself accountable. We have a Facebook group. Plan your training sessions and then do them. Start with the end in mind. Track your training with a baseline video, a training journal, and video sessions, and also celebrate your successes, because that is really motivating. I'm here because I recognize that every step towards your goal is a success, even though maybe somebody thinks, well, your horse just stepped on the mat. Well, I know how important that is in the bigger scheme, so I'm here to help you celebrate your successes. So, training ideas for moving with your horse. You can walk in the arena. You can use cones for clarity. And for instance, click for reaching each cone. And then you can take the cones further apart over time. You can walk outside on trails or the road if that's safe. Novelty can really spike your horse's energy. They often like to be outside. If they're not too fearful, of course. You can ask a friend to come along. Just a person, doesn't even have to be a horse, can also add novelty and motivation, or you can go with other horses. You can walk over poles, you can use a moving target, or you can build muscle with in-hand work. If you want to let your horse move more than you do, you can use a reverse round pen. Not too often, because circles are already hard on the body. You can send your horse around cones. That's what I did. I started with a square, because you have to teach your horse to go around cones first. And then you can set the cones further apart, because your horse knows I don't have to touch the cone, but I have to walk around the cone. Then it doesn't matter how far apart they are, because they know they can only, they will only get reinforced for getting around the cone. You can also send your horse from a mat to a mat. And in riding, you can use cones and mats to target, and you can also send your horse over poles by himself, or you can do from A to B's if you have two people, and you can send your horse from person to person, and then in that way you usually can build like faster movements quicker. The pitfall is that you need to be aware of that your horse doesn't turn like 180 degrees and go to the other person, but you can have to make him that bend, and that is hard on the body. So, but just ideas. Always ask questions. Always, always, always questions, questions, questions. So the homework is that I would like you to make a baseline video of where your horse is at. This has turned out to be very, very challenging, because the moment we want to do a baseline video, we do want to show some kind of result. This is not the purpose of this video. This is the video, this is the baseline. Then you know where your horse and you are at. So the worse it goes, the better it is, because when the quality is very low, expectation-wise, behavior-wise, you can only go up. So don't try to train your horse to do a little bit better. Just basically do what you were doing before or what you have in mind. Make a video of that. You can make the baseline video. It's good to have like a longer video just for your own purposes. If you share the video, all the videos that you share in this program must be under 3 minutes. So you can take out a little clip of maximum 3 minutes to show in the Facebook group, like, okay, this is what we have been doing. I am only walking with my horse at the moment because he doesn't know how to offer yet. Just basically, baseline is not training. So make a baseline video where your horse is at. If it's like 15-minute video for your own bookkeeping, so to say, that is really, really good, because then you know and you can compare it in 2 weeks with what you did now. And then I want you to write down what your end goal is for your horse. Be very specific. I want him to lose weight, more active, like what Ina already said so beautifully, that she wanted like the balanced movement. So then you have your baseline, where you start, and then where you want to go. And then we will close that gap between those two things in writing a shaping plan and a training plan in these 2 weeks. So you have solid foundation to, after the program ends, that you know exactly what to do and you have so much clarity. So I will stop the recording, because we will have a Q&A. Stop recording.